Will they book him? If a Manhattan grand jury hands up a criminal indictment against Donald Trump, that will make him the first U.S. president, sitting or former, to face felony charges. We'll ask about the case of alleged hush money paid to former porn star Stormy Daniels, and whether fingerprinting and a possible perp walk for the cameras helps or hurts Trump's chances in the race for 2024. So far, even his Republican opponents are backing his line that it's a witch hunt by partisan prosecutors and judges. As often in the U.S., New Yorkers elect their district attorneys. And in this case, he is a Democrat. How blind really is justice in America? How much faith is left in institutions? After the January 6th storming of the Capitol in 2021, Trump's showdown with the courts provides the kind of drama that the former reality TV star relishes and that cable news networks thrive on. But what toll on a U.S. democracy where already wild conspiracy theories about rigged elections have gone mainstream? What will the next election there look like? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking whether or not Donald Trump gets indicted. Joining us from Washington, communications strategist Douglas Hay, who's a former communications director for the Republican National Committee. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Political strategist Christian Hanley works on the other side of the aisle with the Democratic Party. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Sociologist Davina Frau-Meggs, Professor Emerita of American Studies at Sorbonne Nouvelle University. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Gabrielle Latanzioub, who is a assistant professor of American Studies at Paris's Panthéon-Sorbonne University.
Good to be here. Yeah.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. No indictment yet. Spotted going to the office this Wednesday morning. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is his name. This after the grand jury there took the day off on Tuesday. It's anyone's guess if it's now the day when this indictment, this criminal indictment, could happen. Vedika Bael looks at it.
A former president has never been prosecuted in U.S. history, a fact which could change in the coming week. Donald Trump has said he expects to be indicted in connection to his involvement in a $130,000 hush money payment made via his lawyer to porn star Stormy Daniels in 2016. Authorities seek to determine whether Trump was guilty of a misdemeanor by falsifying business records or a felony by breaking election law and purposely hiding this information from voters. If charged, Trump would first be notified to travel to New York City to surrender. And for security reasons, it's unlikely prosecutors would knock on his Mar-a-Lago door. Upon his arrival to the district attorney's office, the former president would be arrested and booked, with his fingerprints and mugshot taken before appearing for arraignment in court. A conviction on a misdemeanor would result in a fine, but if convicted on the felony charge, Trump would face a maximum sentence of 4 years behind bars, though it's uncertain if he'll serve this. After he called on his supporters to protest, barricades have been installed outside the U.S. Capitol building to protect from any violence that could accompany the case, as authorities fear a repeat of January 6, 2021. It's been mirrored outside Trump Tower in New York, where his loyalists have gathered, with police on high alert. The ramifications for Trump's chances in the 2024 presidential run are unclear.
We're getting breaking news, Douglas Hay, that the grand jury in Manhattan won't reconvene on Wednesday as scheduled. A session canceled, according to the New York Post, by the Manhattan District Attorney. People have been told to be on standby for Thursday. What can we read in that?
At this point, there's not much we can read in it other than we know that what Donald Trump created in this kind of larger conversation hasn't been true. He was the one who talked about being indicted. He was the one who said this was going to happen on Tuesday. It didn't happen yesterday. It's not going to happen today. We'll see if it happens tomorrow or next week or what have you. But this is Donald Trump trying to frame the debate in the way that he sees it, at least in primary politics, to his advantage.
It's because they are saying an unidentified witness could not appear before the grand jury this Wednesday. So it doesn't sound like so far the Manhattan DA is getting cold feet. Douglas Hay, just to remind our international viewers, the whole world watches those U.S. Courtroom dramas unfold in real life, but grand juries, they happen in secret.
Mm-hmm. They do. That allows for a freer testimony, also away from scrutiny. They'll ultimately make a decision. Is Donald Trump indictable for a crime or not, or anyone else in Trump's orbit? And grand juries are very hard to, A, get leaks from. We haven't really had that happen. And also to sort of figure out in advance what they're going to do. At this point, there's a lot of speculation, but no one knows for sure.
No one knows for sure. Christian Hanley, your thoughts on justice being more deliberate than, as Douglas was saying, the former U.S. president predicted?
Yeah, so I mean, and I actually wrote about this on Substack just this week, the fact that we really in this country have a very hard time holding people in power to account, especially when it comes to presidents. It's been 20 years since the Iraq War, and George Bush has faced no consequences. And now we have Donald Trump, who has, after committing numerous different offenses, has had no repercussions, at least at the federal level. And so what we're seeing now is state prosecutors, both in this case in Manhattan as well as in Fulton County, Georgia, being charged with taking responsibility for seeing that justice is served. The concern here, though, really is the fact that this is a common law jurisdiction for international audiences. A lot of American law, like other English-speaking countries, is based on precedent and past practices. And it's as much as there is the risk of civil unrest, as Trump has alluded to, if he is indicted, the longer-term ramifications are far more grave if he is not indicted, as that will show that, in fact, there is such a thing in this country as being above the law.
And do you think that up to now we should not read too much into the fact that there have been no criminal charges yet filed? It's been, more than 2 years now since the wrongdoing on the bigger charges, if that's what legal experts are calling them, than the hush money, the charges involving the 2020 elections, that it's been more than 2 years. Is that just because justice is methodical?
That is part of it. There also is the concern that at the federal level, with Merrick Garland's Justice Department, that the department could be doing something that is, and I know this word is being abused a lot lately, unprecedented, which is balancing the legal concerns against political and general security concerns, which in theory, the DOJ should not really be engaged in that sort of weighing of the options. That being said, this is a federal system, and state crimes can be, in many cases, no less severe in terms of the process and punishment than federal offenses. And so even though from perhaps a moral standpoint or a public relations standpoint, those federal offenses are graver, are bigger crimes, so to speak, in plain English, that does not mean that Trump could not still face very serious repercussions for his actions, both in this Stormy Daniels affair in Manhattan, as well as in his attempt to thwart the process in Georgia in the Fulton County investigation as well.
It is precedent-setting. Divina Frau Megs, Richard Nixon was pardoned before he could ever be criminally indicted over Watergate. On the hashtag F24 debate, Dylan asking, Sarkozy got jailed for corruption. We didn't exactly get jailed. He's got an electronic bracelet, but still, he got criminally convicted. It was the same with Jacques Chirac, who also had a criminal conviction. If Trump doesn't face justice for his various crimes, what does that say about America? Is the Justice Department right, when you listen there to Christian Hanley, is the Justice Department right to proceed with caution before charging a former president?
I think so, of course. I think anything that can prove Trump wrong at the moment about the legal system is good. And in a way, he's been hoisted with his own petard because he's announced in advance something that hasn't happened. And so he's gotten too early as to the justice system, which may show that the justice system is taking its time, not obeying his agenda and thwarting his agenda, though he is also trying to thwart the other two cases that are against him in Georgia and in Florida. So I would say that the American system is proceeding totally the right way. You were right to remind that the system of having the probe is not an indictment. So even that, for the moment, is Trump crying wolf for something that hasn't happened. But he is stirring up his troops. He is preparing his troops, and only his troops, in my opinion. I don't think he can gather more people around him than the ones he already has.
Is there something different about the United States, Gabriel Latanzio, that makes it that we've never had a criminal indictment of a former president? I mean, viewers watching us in Peru, they've seen how many of their presidents now. The last one is currently being detained. Is there something different about the United States?
Well, if you look at history, a number of presidents ran into legal troubles. It's happened time and time again. You could think about Andrew Johnson in the 1860s, who tried to go against the progress made by the Republicans who had just beaten slavery, et cetera, and so on. It's happened before. Now, Trump, I think, is a master at shaping the narrative. And too often, I believe, I'm no Trump supporter, but too often he's described as being impulsive and not thinking ahead. But in truth, I think here he knows what he's doing. He was elected in 2016 by saying the system is rigged, and I know why it is, because I participate in it, and I want to change that. He was perceived as the leader of the opposition to the system somehow, right? And in that case here, that's exactly what he is doing. He does not seem to lose any support from his usual supporters when it comes to the moral aspect of what he did, which is, well, I won't be too explicit here. I think wait and see. Whether or not it's going to play in his favor, I'm not sure. And Democrats don't know either. That's what I remember for the past few days, is that Democrats are keeping quiet. When the DOJ does not do much, it says something about the attitude of Biden's team. And when the Democratic representatives...
What do you mean by that, says something about Biden's team?
Of course it is political. It is political. If Biden felt this was of the moment, they would have acted to discredit the former president, for sure.
So what, they're waiting for the right political moment, is what you're suggesting?
They're careful because they don't know what to expect from the result of of what's happening. Alvin Bragg is not acting for the federal government at all. He's the Manhattan district attorney. So we're not even sure so far what they're going to charge him for. Could be tax fraud, could be campaign financing, but it's not yet at the federal level. It might happen down the road, of course. We might be opening Pandora's box, but a lot of unknowns at that point.
Right, yeah, this is one of several cases. And Trump, as was mentioned at the outset, taking, and he's done it since, to his now favorite social media, Truth Social. This is a clip from Tuesday.
These four horrible, radical left Democrat investigations of your all-time favorite president, me, is just a continuation of the most disgusting witch hunt in the history of our country. It's gone on forever with Russia, and Ukraine, and the Mueller hoax. It's an absolute disgrace what's going on.
Douglas, hey, why does he say Russia, and Ukraine? What did Russia and Ukraine have to do with this?
Well, that was certainly a lot of the conversation. What was going on with Trump and his family, with some of the businesses in Russia, some of the deals that they had going on. And this is also Trump's very consistent attempt to muddy these waters. But I think we should be mindful of the fact that Donald Trump hasn't been charged with a crime yet, and it's not clear if he actually committed one. And the third part is, if he goes to trial, it's going to be a jury trial. And one of the things that whether you're a district attorney or the attorney general that you have to be very mindful of is if you're not going to indict somebody unless you have a real confidence that you're going to win the trial and convict them. If Donald Trump goes to trial and is exonerated, that's going to be a much bigger boon for him politically than not indicting him in the first place.
Will it be the case, though, with those? He alludes there to several cases, and most notably the one where he's accused of pressuring election officials in Georgia. He could get off on one and not the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this is the challenge that every criminal investigation into Trump has, that there are a lot of them, says there's a lot of smoke, but you not only have to find the fire, you have to be able to convince a jury, 12 people, that here's the fire and that they all have to agree on that. That's a very difficult thing to do, especially in the country that's so politically divided right now.
So politically divided, many had predicted the decline of Trump when he was voted out of office in 2020. But there are still plenty of true believers, not just outside his adopted home in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. The former president's popularity among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents remaining solidly consistent since he spectacularly entered politics for the first time in 2015. Douglas Hay, is it still his party?
Well, he's still the most dominant figure of it. I don't think it's his party. He doesn't own it, but he certainly has the largest collection of supporters, certainly compared to House Republicans or Senate Republicans. But he's going to have to go through a Republican primary process, which hasn't even started yet. He starts in the lead, but he's going to have to win it, just as he did last time. And that stands with him going on the debate stage with a Ron DeSantis, with a Nikki Haley, and winning those debates and winning those votes. He hasn't started that part of the process yet.
You mentioned Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, Trump's potential main rival, and who's rallied behind the president when it comes to these criminal probes. DeSantis instead taking aim at the Manhattan district attorney at a press conference. He said, "The real victims are ordinary New Yorkers, ordinary Americans. They get victimized every day because of the reckless political agenda that these Soros district attorneys bring to their jobs," an allusion to George Soros. What's behind? I'll put it to you, Davina Framex. Why the allusion to George Soros?
Typical plot theory. There's a big conspiration from the elites against us, the people, and they're just stirring. And I think Trump is using these circumstances of these three indictments or potential probes against him to tell his opponents within the Republican Party, I still have pull. I can still call on my base. You are trying to prepare yourself for being candidates against me, but listen and look at the statistics. And I would say that DeSantis, Pence have been paying lip service, really minimum lip service to him in this case, saying it's troubling. There should not be a first case of this like this. We shouldn't start in this route in America. But that's not strong defense about about Trump. It's really just doing the minimal job for the moment, not to lose their chances.
Christian Hanley, do you agree that it's just lip service to defending Trump against? Again, in America, district attorneys are elected, and this one happens to be a Democrat because. Take, for instance, the words of the Speaker of the House, most powerful Republican in Congress, Kevin McCarthy. He, too, accusing justice of not being blind.
Right. Well, of course, I mean, in that case, it's really going right back to the conversation about the Republican primary, right? So when we're talking about that sort of hollow defense of Donald Trump and turning the aggression, the offensive toward the prosecutors, that really is for the base. That is for Republican voters who will be voting in the primaries. That's why Ron DeSantis he will be the single biggest opponent of Donald Trump once he is on a debate stage during the primary process. But for right now, he does not want to alienate that base by going after Donald Trump or remaining neutral. For him, the safest thing he can do to help win or create any kind of favor with that base is to stand by the current Republican front runner and to politicize the potential indictment, to politicize the process. I mean, look, when you're asking about why are they talking about the prosecutor, why they're talking about George Soros, in this country, sadly, this is a decades-old, generations-old trick of the culture wars and partisan politics. You have white conservative politicians who cast aspersions about northern cities that are more ethnically and racially diverse, politically and socially more liberal, and in this case, their favorite boogeyman of the day of this generation, really, George Soros, who happens to be Jewish. It's an anti-Semitic trope. It's a conspiracy theory, but it plays to that base.
Gabriel Latanzio, it's not just in the United States. Is it a vote getter? This,
Sure. Well, Soros and DeSantis, there's so much to be said here. I was going to say what we just said, which is it is anti-Semitism. Of course it is. Jews ruling the world with money. That being said, there is money involved, right? DAs get elected. He got $500,000 from a political action committee that is linked to George Soros. Now, you can question whether or not it should be that way, but it is that way. It is legal. It is fair. George Soros has beliefs. He defends them. So far, so good, right? Now, when it comes to Ron DeSantis, he's in this weird spot, right? Because he's trying to differentiate himself from Trump. And he's trying as well to defend the cause of republicanism. So how does he do that? Yes, he does defend Trump by attacking Alvin Bragg. True. But he did something else as well just in the past couple days. He said what we need in a leader is also moral fortitude. And he goes back to the founding fathers, and you hear Ron DeSantis saying, if you look at the founding fathers, they were people of great human quality. By the way, not true. Think of Hamilton. He was an adulterer. That's one example, no matter if we admire him or not. Think of Jefferson as well, another founding father who apparently had a family with a slave of his. So Ron DeSantis is positioning himself as the reasonable man who's still faithful to the Republican Party. That's a good play, but yeah. Problematic.
And he puts a jibe about porn.
Yeah.
And why should he get involved?
Sure.
So he plays clean.
Are you surprised, Douglas Hay, that the Republican Party is where it's at today? We thought there'd be some kind of a transformation, a move back towards the center, especially after Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Is the Republican Party, again, still going to fight these culture wars in 2024?
Oh, well, sure. And it's one of the things that you see Ron DeSantis do very methodically and strategically is he picks and chooses his battles very well on the terrain that he thinks he can. But meanwhile, the Republican Party is having a very real debate on what it wants foreign policy to be, what Republican foreign policy should be over the coming not just 2 or 4 years, but 10 years and beyond. That's where you're seeing a split between a Donald Trump, who certainly is doing and sending messages that are more pro-Putin, anti-Ukraine, than you are from congressional leadership, which is still backing up Zelensky as much as possible. Mitch McConnell just recently visited there as well. And that's going to continue. Are we the party of Reagan or the party of Trump on foreign policy? That's going to continue to play itself out.
Donald Trump certainly... go ahead, Christian Hanley. Oh, can you hear us, Christian?
Oh, I can hear you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, though.
I thought you were jumping in. That's why.
No.
Oh, okay. We'll cross to you in a minute, Christian. Donald Trump's good for ratings. So is keeping those who spread his lies and keep his supporters on board. That is the claim made by Dominion Voting Systems. It's the voting machine company that is suing Fox News' parent company for defamation and asking for $1.6 billion from the conservative cable news channel, helping the plaintiff's case over debunked vote rigging claims are leaked emails and texts illustrating how star presenters allegedly knew Trump was lying while still cheering for him on air. Here you see Tucker Carlson, who hosts the most watched cable news TV channel in the United States, saying we're very, very close to being able to ignore Trump for most nights. I truly can't wait. I hate him passionately. Davina Frau Meggs, I think here in Europe we don't understand the difference between news and entertainment. Is that what this is about?
Well, You catch me here. Fox really has been treading a fine line, and the people you're mentioning call themselves hosts, not journalists. And I think this is where the confusion reigns in America as much as in Europe, watching America. So
we're starting to see the same thing in France on cable news on one cable news channels.
Yes,
right?
we are starting to imitate them, and I don't think
because it
it's
gets
better
because it makes money and gets ratings, or is it an ideological crusade?
It's both. I think these people are pandering to popularity and populism, but also they're funny. They create anger. They're emotion based. So it feeds all this new trend towards preferring opinions to facts. It all feeds into easy disinformation by people who look like journalists. They're like you. They're trunk that appears. So they look like you, but they don't present facts like you.
Gabriel Atanzio.
Nuance doesn't sell. I think we're fans of the channel here. We spoke before the show and we said how much we appreciate your work here at this station. We truly do.
Are you about to tell me we're boring?
No, and I know you're doing a great job. I know the ratings are good as well. But my point is that we tend to react against more so than in favor. Think back to the number of times you were online and you read Twitter and you reacted with a little bit more interest to things you disliked. It's so much more common than it is in support of people you actually like. And my impression is it's true in France, it's true in the US, it's true everywhere. In some way, it is the left that chooses the right's champion and the right that chooses the left's champion. As in, we give publicity to that we detest, to that we do not like. And of course, Trump has many intense Republican supporters, but the publicity he got in 2015 had so much to do with Democratic-leaning news agencies who focused on him in order to demonize him. But in the end, people finally chose someone that they disliked but recognized because they recognized their own flaws in him. So no, I do think we have to be careful as to how we talk about it.
But it creates a very different reality. I think that's major still in the US compared to Europe, is that if you look at Fox, you don't live in the same world.
Well, for sure. I'll put it to Christian Hanley here. It's not just Fox that has Donald Trump as their business model for driving ratings. It's also the likes of the more left-leaning channels like MSNBC or CNN.
Right. So, I mean, basically, I'm going to pick off where my counterpart left off, which is it's true. It does create an entire bubble in which people live. And there are people in the United States who they truly do not have a grasp of any kind of objective reality. It's become even a joke. There's one comedian who will deliberately travel to swing states and attend Trump rallies and ask people very straightforward questions, no plays on words, nothing complicated, and just get them to speak plainly. And it's abundantly clear that because they are only consuming this one type of media, that's what they're getting. To your point about the business model, though, that is true. What I would say, though, or just caution people against, is making the equivalency between Fox News and the newer web-based, mostly channels farther to the right, like OAN, and compare them too much to CNN and MSNBC. The latter two make editorial decisions to speak to a certain audience, to address certain issues and cover certain stories that will be of interest to certain audiences. They do not, however, lie, fabricate, make up false narratives simply for the purpose of selling ad time.
But hang on, isn't there a problem in what you're saying,
does.
Christian, in that you have one channel that's looking at one constituency and the other channel looking at the other, and nobody's trying to win over everyone?
Well, I mean, that there has been a change, a leadership at CNN where that has been sort of the attempt, but let's not forget this sort of divergence or split among news viewers in the United States really goes back to the mid-90s with cable, with Fox coming on the air. And that one example, that first example, has become so profitable that now in the age of the internet and social media, you now have other startups like OAN, like Newsmax, who follow that business model. And so they know that the outrage drives engagement, it drives viewership. It gets them more clicks and more plays online on social media, on their websites, not just conventional TV viewers. And so at that point, where is the profit model? Where is the business model, the profit incentive rather, to be straight down the middle and passionless and just simply give the facts to the people? Frankly, there doesn't seem to be one right now.
Douglas, I don't want to labor this point too long because I'm always wary that it's only journalists that are interested in what's going on in the media. But how much does this, this question of where people get their news, does it erode democracy, or has it always been the case?
Look, we used to have an even more partisan press in the United States. If you go back to the days of Andrew Johnson, who was mentioned earlier, and Thomas Jefferson, it was much more negative. But the reality is also, Donald Trump has been a drug for the media, and he's been a drug for the worldwide media. The more you put his picture on TV or in newspapers, the more people buy it. I remember being in the French Senate in December of 2015, and there were several newspapers, French newspapers, from Le Monde to Libération to Le Journal du Dimanche, and every one of them had Donald Trump's picture on the front page. There's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Trump's also his firebrand method. Is it? I mean, let me put it to you, Davina Frau-Meggs. In the UK, the tabloids can be extremely vitriolic, but the public also gets the sense that there's an element of entertainment involved in all of this. Do you agree with Christian Hanley that in the U.S. it's different and people take things more literally?
I think it depends on what kind of audience you have. And I think at the moment we are at a level of great illiteracy of audiences. People who have a hard time decrypting messages, decrypting bias, seeing where there is political involvement or not. And these people can be caught more easily in bubbles. And what we're seeing also is a conflation.
And is that an American problem or a worldwide problem?
I think it's a worldwide problem, but the degradation of the school system in America is enormous. And the levels of illiteracy, functional illiteracy, are enormous. And I think that contributes to a lot of people being caught in this trap of not being able to decipher and reason about what's happening and engage in conversations and debates where all the sides of one argument are being taken. And we are being a victim of that. And these people at the moment are on the demand side, and that's a business model. You listen to the demand side. Hosts listen to the demand side instead of deciding, like journalists in their executive groups, etc., deciding the supply. What is worth the agenda? What is worth discussing? How do we present things? And there's a disconnect here that is very hard to repair at the moment unless we repair the levels of literacy of the people. And it's happening also in France. And I guess, Gabriel, you agree with me on...
No, absolutely. But I think I'm even more pessimistic than you are. Because if it is, the school system, if it is all these reasons, then there are ways to repair it. And my impression is that if you look statistically at how we engage online, going back to that point, you just get more engagement if you post a picture of your face than if you post a picture of, say, a place or a topic or something. It's so much easier to talk about someone than it is to talk about something. Yeah, and politicians understand that. So that's what we do. And that's the way we get people interested is, look, he's the face of something. Well, I wish we would have the face of climate change, and all that. But
Douglas,
in matters of disinformation, the people who are most likely to be disinformed and to fall for these traps are the least educated. That's statistically also real, and that's research-based.
Absolutely. So Douglas, hey, is it a real sense of disenfranchisement that politicians are tapping into, or is it, as Davina says, decades of underfunding of education coming back to haunt democracy?
Well, they don't need to be mutually exclusive. They can both be true at the same time. But one of the things that Donald Trump very smartly tapped into was there is a feeling in a lot of cities and really rural areas throughout the country that they've been forgotten and left behind, and they're angry, and they're right to be angry. Now, maybe the solutions that Trump proposed, where he proposed solutions, weren't necessarily the smartest, and I'd argue they weren't, but that's what he tapped into, and that's true here. certainly if you look at what's going on in a lot of countries throughout Western Europe, you're seeing those same things happen as well.
Yeah, Trump's bashing of the judiciary reminds us of rule of law showdowns and the fact that there are people who are kind of having the same kind of power plays in places like Israel, Poland, and Hungary, a favorite destination. We mentioned earlier that Fox News host Tucker Carlson even filmed a documentary with the EU leader most favorable to Vladimir Putin, Viktor Orban. There you see the pair of them together. Yeah, we thought, oh, this is kind of like Gabriel Latanzio, the Philip Roth novel, the Plot Against America. That once the man goes away, it's like a bad dream and it's over. But the fact that you have this sort of these showdowns over rule of law are taking place on this continent and other parts of the world right now.
Oh, God, that conversation is so important. I think a big conversation to have when it comes to American news right now is how much power should judges have? And it might seem obvious to people who watch this show, but that's a big issue we have. And I think that explains a little bit why Democrats are wary to go all the way anti-Trump at this very moment. Because if you hope that the judiciary can solve political discussions and political casting calls, as to who's going to lead, et cetera, and so on. Well, then, that might not get people to vote, right? If the goal is to get people to vote, if you rely on judges, say the Supreme Court, to participate in lawmaking as it has been, if you want, district attorneys to play a political role as well, that's an issue for Democrats as well. Now, as far as the angle you just took, saying, we need to look at abroad, agree with you. I think conservatives are smart. They might talk about their nation all the time, but they look abroad constantly. And what they see is that there is a conservative playbook. There is. So you blame the system. You say it's bad. You say you're on the side of the common man, right? You say the education system is not doing too well. By the way, yes, it is, because they've underfunded it. So that makes sense, right? But you say, they're teaching your kids to be gay or whatever, et cetera, and so on. So it's the Bolsonaro playbook. I think he's the one who perfected it. Eventually, in the end, he loses. So we'll see how that turns out in the US. But yeah. We need to look at the whole global picture.
Christian Handley, on the point of, you heard there from Gabriel about why the Democrats are proceeding with caution. Is it also that perhaps Donald Trump would be a great opponent for Joe Biden when he's expected to announce his run for re-election? After all, the current occupant of the White House beat him last time.
Yeah, no, so I mean, I need to take a half a step back, if I may, and clear something up. A big reason why Democrats are sort of staying out of the narrative of what's going on right now with the Manhattan DA and the Fulton County DA, for that matter, in Georgia, is this is not a case of the judiciary weighing in on political issues. Let's be very clear about that. There is an entire line of case law of the Supreme Court of the United States declining to hear review of certain cases because they rule them as being non-justiciable or non-judgeable political disputes that they will just reject out flatly and will not weigh in on. What we want to see is a criminal who formerly occupied the White House finally, at long last, face justice. And if we start championing or cheering on prosecutors or judges as though they were part of some sort of partisan matchup, then we're playing right into Donald Trump's narrative, and it's just not worth it. Now, in terms of him,
if you declare him a criminal before he's been tried, much less convicted.
Okay, but this is 6 years old. Like let's not do the misinformation thing here. Okay, we're all very intelligent people. We've seen what he has done since 2015. You're right that he has he has every right. He has every right to have his day in court. But he needs to first have his day in court.
You agree he's not a criminal. He hasn't been convicted of a felony yet.
Mm-hmm. He has not yet been convicted. We've seen him engage in many acts that if anybody else had done them, would already have gotten them arrested and convicted. Let's be adult about this, okay? So that's clear. That is abundantly clear to anybody observing. Now, in terms of the election, that question, when it comes to Joe Biden, I mean, yes, he beat him last time fair and square, and yet we're still litigating that issue because Donald Trump will not be a graceful loser and let it go. He attempted a coup the last time around, and we saw that as well, speaking of crimes. So, I mean, yes, is Donald Trump going to get his base riled up potentially by being indicted? Sure. Will he grow his base? Will he get any support from moderates, independents, independent-minded Republicans? Of course not. That universe is of one size. It's not going to shrink or expand.
Douglas Hay?
Look, I agree. Trump's indictment, if that happens, helps him in a primary because he can portray himself as a victim, is potentially terrible for him in a general. But if we see Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and other prominent Democrats going ahead and calling Donald Trump a criminal before he's been indicted or convicted, that creates a political problem for Democrats. It shows that they're politicizing the process. It's why they're smart not to do that.
Yeah.
And we can all pat ourselves on the back and say, but we're smarter than that. The smart politics is to stay out of it.
Last time it was said that Trump would lose by a lot the general election. In the end, it was closer than many thought, Douglas Hay.
Look, Donald Trump has a passionate base that's going to show up for him. We know that. Obviously, Biden was able to appeal to some of those voters who were independent, moderate voters who were maybe voted for Trump over Hillary, but were exhausted. And Biden has this great position where you can't argue that he's not the only person who can beat Trump because he beat him. And if Trump comes in a weakened position, Biden's in a strengthened position. But we still have to deal with inflation and all these other issues, rising crime, that are going to dominate our headlines in non-Trump ways.
Gabriela Tanzio, you mentioned earlier Brazil's former president. What is it about Florida? It's currently the refuge of Trump and Jair Bolsonaro. He is mostly lying low in a quiet suburb of Orlando these days.
But I think Bolsonaro is also the teacher of DeSantis. Look at what DeSantis has been doing for the past couple of months, right? He's been trying to win the culture war. He's saying there's an enemy from within. And he's saying, look, well, I'm a teacher, so of course I care. But he's saying that some teachers are not doing their jobs, right? He's saying that if kids become gay, it's because some people are misguided, etc., and so on. And that works. It does work. And, I'm not even mentioning the issue of how he's hoping to teach about racial history, which is also absolutely horrendous. So, there's so much to be said there.
Douglas Hay, you agree that DeSantis is a student of Bolsonaro? And is that a winning ticket?
I think we overrate how much the right spends time thinking about Bolsonaro or Orban or other folks like that. There are certainly international cross currents on that. We could talk about the Brexit vote and Trump's election. But I don't think Ron DeSantis is spending a lot of time, nor his consultants, looking specifically at the Bolsonaro playbook.
Davina Fraumex.
Yeah, DeSantis has learned from Trump. What's helping DeSantis is that Trump is not mentioned much in the Fox networks. So he's not anymore supported by the network that made him. And that's going to be a game changer. DeSantis is now the new mascot and the one they're talking about. Yeah. And they keep, of course, so as not to speak about Trump, of course, they talk about Biden and Hillary and Soros, etc., the usual people they bash upon. But Trump is disappearing from the Fox screens. And that's going to damage Trump, whatever else is happening, indictment or not.
We looked at his poll numbers. They haven't gone down that much, though.
Fox did not cover them.
Right.
And Trump did rail about that because he was very unhappy about these results. I don't think I agree with you that he's not going to expand his base. So whatever voters he's had, he might keep. In Florida, he might lose some, because Mar-a-Lago, the story that's happening there is not nice for that state. And Florida is an important state to win for elections, and DeSantis is there. So I think it's very, very hot at the moment for Trump. And I think he's getting very exacerbated and is going to show. And that's he's going to make a mistake. And I think the Democrats are being very quiet because they know that something is going to give.
Christian Hanley,
is going to give.
One final question. I'll put it to you very briefly because we're out of time. The democracy in the United States withstood the stress test of January the 6th. They still validated Joe Biden as the president that day. Is it going to be another stress test on par with that if there are criminal indictments against a former president?
I think there certainly could be. It could be a very serious stress test. I would encourage everyone in the United States to stay calm, let the process play out. in terms of my counterpart's point, I do agree. I'm speaking for myself here, but I do think the Democrats should stay out of it. That's both good politics and good observance of the rule of law. And as people who respect our democracy, we should let the process play out and not resort to any sort of hyperbole, as this will be a very tense and fraught time going forward.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. So much more to ask about. Christian Hanley, I want to thank you. I want to thank Douglas Hay as well for being with us from Washington. Davina Frau, Megs, Gabriel Latanzio. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.